Alright, so Antifa November 4th. It's the big topic right now. I held off talking about it for a while so I could look some stuff up. And, well, the short story is, Mariah's laughing at me. What's going on?
Look funny.
The short story is probably not a big deal. So here's why. This group that sort of started it, or I'm sorry, this group that started it is called Refuse Fascism. I went to their website. I read all their stuff. They're just kind of silly. They had this big protest where they could only turn up 8 people. They couldn't block the whole highway. They blocked the highway with these placards saying November 4th it begins, or it begins November 4th or something. They didn't have enough people to hold up all the signs, all the letters, so some of them had to hold up 2 letters and everything, and they couldn't block the road. People were going around them. So this is not a big, powerful group here that can mobilize vast amounts of people. So that's the first. That's the first part. Now there's some other groups that are sort of glommed onto this. Revolutionary Communist Party or Communist Revolution. These people's names are not important. They've sort of said they're involved. Okay, so that's the information we know. That they've said, oh, we're going to have these protests on November 4th. If you read their propaganda, their plan is to have these protests in city centers, and they'll grow and they'll grow and they'll grow and they'll grow, and 100 voices will turn into 100 million voices, and we will end this regime. And shall you hear the people sing? It's very much rhetoric, the communist left-wing, rhetoric. You would expect to see this kind of thinking painted on a giant mural somewhere under a bust of Stalin or Lenin or somebody. It doesn't come across as credible. Now, there's something else that makes it seem less than credible. These people are only successful when George Soros pays a bunch of bums to show up. And Soros typically doesn't broadcast. Typically, I mean, who am I? I'm nobody. But when I look at the things we find out later Soros was involved in, he doesn't generally broadcast them. He seems to like these things to appear to be organic and spring out of the natural outrage of the people. So announcing it beforehand is not his style. But now that doesn't mean he's not willing to glom onto something that someone else started. He may be. Remember, Soros isn't in this for the... he's not a true believer. He likes to topple currencies and control and make his money betting against economies and currencies, and then he goes about toppling them and undermining them, and then he makes huge profits. That's his game in all this. So I mean, if he thought this thing had a chance to work, he would definitely jump in and promote it. But generally, his stuff, it's all sneaky behind the scenes. He wouldn't announce it beforehand. That being said, he has just transferred $18 billion into his foundation, and his foundation's all that is a front for these anti whatever activities of his, where he's trying to sink economies and whatnot. So, I mean, Alex Jones talked about this in one of his things. Now, I'm not generally a giant proponent of Alex Jones. He's always got great information, raw information, sometimes how he handles it. I'm not, he's exhausting, But anyway, he's definitely a force of nature. No, he's an interesting guy. He's not a primary source for me lots of times. But he did have this raw information, and it was good information about this $18 billion Soros has dropped to his foundation and what possibly is going to happen with it. The thing to remember about these Antifa weirdos, first off, is they're not organized. There's not an Antifa, writ large umbrella organization with an executive that we know about. Where's my tinfoil hat? No. Sorry, this is getting silly now. This is a really loosely confederated group, but they're big. They're defining moments. There's a phrase I'm looking for, and I'm not going to come up with it, so I shouldn't try. But we'll just go with defining moments. Lately have been the Occupy movement, which was Soros funded, the Indian reservation protests against the pipeline, which I still think were Warren Buffett funded. He's the one who's big into transporting oil by rail cars. He hates pipelines because they cut into his rail car oil transportation business. And there was another one, Occupy, the Women's March, and yeah, I mean, all these things fit a template. So I'm pretty sure that's what these guys are aiming for. They're speaking with, insular groups like this have a rhetoric. If you talk to Hebraic roots Christians like us, we have a vocabulary and topics of conversation that sound pretty strange to people from the outside. But if you could interpret the vocabulary and everything, you get to the other side of it and you realize, this stuff's not too crazy. Antifa is very, very crazy, but they have a rhetoric and a propaganda style that is easy to interpret as armed conflict. Now, that being said, here's the but. There's always a but. The but is they are talking about regime change. They are talking about overthrowing the government in their press releases for November 4th. But the way they're saying it, they're kind of saying, this is going to be a popular. I don't know. They're not using the language. The language they're using is the language of protest and the usual foolishness, Occupy foolishness, Women's March, that kind of stuff. What they're saying is not necessarily we're coming with guns to kill conservatives. Although this is Antifa, and that is, something they say is legitimate, punch a fascist and all that stuff. And if you're a fascist, you're not actually human. They talk about they're reclaiming in what they say on behalf of humanity. We say no. If you don't agree with them, you're not human. All right? So that's something to keep in mind. So this is not like it's beyond them, but this is not what they're going for right now. There's not going to be armed. I don't think there's going to be armed leftists running around the streets trying to kill people who aren't in black, masked with bandanas. There'll probably be the usual window smashing. I would imagine that they will probably. I'm convinced. I believe this with all my heart. That during the inauguration, you may remember a limousine got torched. I'm convinced they bought that limousine and parked it there, and it was their limousine, and they burned it on purpose themselves. I could be completely wrong. There might be proof against that out there. I am convinced that they burned their own limousine just for the spectacle and the propaganda. That's who these people are. But I'm not worried about November 4th. If you live in any of these city centers, maybe there's going to be some disruptions and some traffic jams and some people standing in the highways and there may be some smashed storefronts. Which, if you think about it, the fact that we're acting like that's no big deal tells you as much as anything about where we're at. And the other thing that's really illuminating about all this is how serious everyone's expecting this sort of thing. Our side, their side, the people on their side who claim not to be on their side. Everyone is expecting unrest. Everyone's expecting revolution and whatnot. The whole world is primed for it right now, and we're no different. That's the really interesting thing about all this is how little fire there is beneath all this smoke. There's 20 or so crazies in California who are talking about this thing initially, and look at the attention it's gotten. Because even if this one's not credible, everyone's just got this feeling that one of these is gonna stick one of these times. So we'll see. As usual, you can never respond in fear. If you're afraid, then it's because you're not prepared. Either your soul's not prepared, your mind's not prepared, or your situation's not prepared. So get your soul right, and but after your soul's right, then the mantra, the words you live by, is peace through strength. Peace through strength. Secure yourself, secure your family, secure your position, And, you know, there's no such thing as a guarantee or 100% certainty. But if you're scared, it's because you perceive that you're weak. So get strong. Appreciate you, man.